welcome everybody on week one, crazy week, and I'm going to be talking to you about how to support twice exceptional students. And as we're quite a small group, I really welcome interactivity. If I say something and you just want to ask a question in that moment, that is something I want to really encourage. So this is Maya. I'd like to tell you a story about Maya. Maya came to this university. She had a 99.8 ATAR, I believe. Very, very bright young lady. She was in a course that required an ATAR of around that region. So she had a magnificent school career. After about 10 months, she left uni. You know how the young students say they drop out, it's that kind of phrase. So she did what we call drop out of uni. To everyone's shock, particularly her family's shock, because she'd done so well in school. What is always surprising to me is, did you know that some of the highest university leavers, the highest numbers, are some of our brightest students? Which is incredible. And there's possibly a couple of reasons for this. One is that they've sailed through school and they haven't built up that resilience. They've always got A's. They've never been knocked back. And, you know, at university, we're going into things a lot more deeply and we are telling it as it is. We're not softening it necessarily like they would have in school. And so they haven't built up that resilience, and that can really be a knock for them. That's one thing. But another reason that we're finding is that they have something else going on. A disability, a neurodiversity, something that's impacting their learning or the way they learn. They're incredibly capable, incredibly smart. And what turned out with Maya was clearly she was what you would call in the intellectually gifted range. We know that from assessments that had been done. Clearly, she was highly capable with that ATAR result and the fact she'd been accepted onto this course. But it was her executive functioning, her organization. She ended up being really overwhelmed. She started to fall behind the drag curve, and it became more and more, and she got further and further behind. And then after 10 months, she just said, I can't do this. And she left. And so what I want to talk to you about is students like Maya. She is clearly very capable, but she also has recently, we've heard, had a diagnosis of ADHD. Okay, ADHD is considered a neurodivergent developmental condition that does impact how you learn. And it's not your ability, it's maybe the way you organize your thoughts and organize yourself. And that's how it is. So this is Maya. And there are many Mayas in many different guises at many universities, of course. So twice exceptionality. This is who these students are. These are who these people are. They're identified as gifted or high potential or high ability, whatever words you use. But they also have a neurodiversity or disability that impacts their learning. This doesn't just necessarily impact their learning, it impacts them showing what they know, getting their thoughts organized. You know those students that can tell you about your subject? They can tell you everything. You're thinking, wow, that's amazing. You've got all of this information, all of these ideas, get it down on paper. And somehow they just don't seem to make that leap onto paper. It's just all here and verbally. And so these are the students I'm going to share with you about what we can do as part of our courses to make university life more accessible, because they don't have parents, family around them supporting them in the same way. They don't have year group tutors or class tutors or different teachers who are going to be helping them. They get together every morning and they organize things and they help. We don't have that at university. So what can we do? Clearly, this is being catered for at university with their work. It's this that we need to focus on. The disability or neurodiversity. So some common traits you might see with twice exceptional students. Clearly they have ability, but they often have challenged executive function. That is around them organizing. That is around them not leaving everything to the very last minute. and then suddenly pulling an all-nighter to get the assignment in. That is, you might see that around attention. They're really wanting to attend what you're saying in the classroom, but they're fidgeting or they're drifting off. It takes nothing to distract them from, very little to distract them. They're suddenly interested in everything that's going on the next desk, the next window, or they're watching a fan. We don't have any here, but in some of the old buildings, there's fans, and they literally click when they're going around, and they've got a choice. I can listen to the lecturer or I can listen to the fan, and the fan always wins. I don't know why. It's just one of those things. You might find their working memory. I say to them, okay, what is Joe? I know Joe knows the answer because I probably wouldn't have asked Joe in the first place. But Joe is, and they don't have that working memory. When they're doing multi-step thinking and problem solving, if they can't write it down, they're trying to hold all these different steps in their working memory. They don't do it as efficiently as people without neurodiversity do. Anxiety, when you're behind the 8 ball, when you're falling behind, when you feel disorganized, of course you're going to have anxiety, or certainly be worried. It doesn't necessarily become anxiety, but there's levels towards that. And low self-esteem. Now, I want us to focus on the executive functioning today, because this is something else. And we can do this quite well through our Moodle sites and through our teaching. So just going to go straight to it. What I do on Moodle. This is pretty much what I do on Moodle. A weekly checklist, a template. I'm going to show you examples of this. I post the dates on Moodle and I post examples. I'm always aware of attention. I'm always aware of working memory. I encourage people to use notes, whether it's electronic notes or whether it's pen and paper, the old-fashioned way, to jot down ideas. With working memory, you might find these students are the ones who just keep blurting out questions. And you might say, you know, Joe, again, poor Joe, Joe, can you wait till the end when we go to Q&A? But Joe can't because Joe's concerned that they are not going to remember it. So you see this in younger children as well, or in teenagers, and they just interrupt. They interrupt what you're saying, bang, even in a conversation. So just be aware of that working memory. But what we're going to show here is how you can really focus on that organization and planning. So here's the first thing that I do. For every week of my Moodle, I go on and I do a checklist. And the checklist, it can be literally 1 or 2 things for the week, or it could be, you know, 7 or 8 things. But people then know that when they go through the checklist and they can tick each box off, they know that they have done what they need to do. Because students, particularly when they start off, they're still not quite sure if they've done enough. And there are some of those students that do worry about that. So doing that checklist, now just beware, on your Moodle, the checklist will look different. It will just look like a list of statements. But on the student's checklist, it's ticked off. And as a lecturer, as the convener of the course, you can actually monitor who's going through the checklists. And that can then highlight students at risk. Because they're not doing this checklist. There may be nothing wrong, but it's a key or a flag to me to just check in. On my checklist, I have things, for example, in week 1. Watch the pre-lecture recordings. Read the pre-lecture readings. Read the compulsory readings for the week. Start thinking about assessment 1. And I go into a bit of detail. Start thinking about the issues you're going to address in assessment 1. Okay, and that's what I've got in the checklist. So, I only found the checklist recently, and I think they're brilliant. The next thing I do, and you'll find this particularly with students, like with my master's students who have been away from education for several years, and they come back in and they say, I haven't done an assessment for 10 years or 20 years, and I need help. I always post up a template This is rough. This is not perfect. But for those people who have activation challenges, and activation is, you'll see that with autism, with ADHD, with dyslexia, dysgraphia, you'll see that with a lot of different specific learning disorders. Activation is the ability to start something, get it started. Once you're started, you're in flow. And so this is really helpful with activation. And I always say this is absolutely up to you whether you use it or not. I'm just giving you a template. I'm giving you words. And some students, depending on their neurodiversity, will say, oh, my conclusion, I've got 245 words, not 250. Is that okay? Because they're so prescriptive and rigid sometimes with their thinking. So I have to be really firm about, this is just an idea. It's just something that's going to help you. Give or take 10%, you know, when we talk about the length of assignments and things. And I've had very good feedback from this, from using it, and it's available for everyone. I don't just say, hey, all of you with special considerations, put your hands up because I'm going to give you something special. I provide it for everyone, of course, right? Okay. So I haven't given them the answer here. I've just given them a structure. On the Moodle, you know where you have your submission, you actually have your submission portal. Because I don't put assessment 1 submission, I put assessment 1 due Friday, the 1st of March, 5 p.m. I put the whole dates and time in there, so there can't be any confusion. It's just these small little triggers that can be done. What I need to do, we're already really busy with courses and teaching. It's extremely busy, and there's the numbers of students are growing at UNSW, which is fantastic. It really is adding to our load. So what I'm trying to do here is distill a few ideas that are going to be very supportive for these students, yet they're easy enough for us to do as course conveners or lecturers. I also put up worked examples of the assessment. I get permission from previous course attendees if I want to use their example. I take the names off their work, of course, so they're anonymous, and I place up there a worked example. So here, with all of this assessment thing, we've got a suggested template for assessment 1. That's the framework if you want to use it. And here are some examples of assessment 1. I say to them, they're not exemplars, they're examples, but they're all passes. Now, generally, I put up things that are kind of credit distinction level. I won't put up a straight pass, but it's, you know, but they can get an idea. And because we forget, when you haven't been in academia for 10 or more years, you really do forget what is required. And I do the same assessment 2. Again, the template, and then an example of assessment 2. There's a few in there. And then I put on another example of assessment 2 because somebody wanted another one. So it's the second example, but it's all really clearly, and I've had this all under the assessment tab. Thinking about worked examples as well, what I have done in the past is, and I will do for this term as well, I didn't do it last term, but is I actually put in track changes for the worked examples so that the students can see what I'm thinking as I go through this. So it's like track change. That's a bigger job. That's not really part of the slides because I'm adding to your workload there. But it's something that you can talk through, or if you have the time, and it's really hard because we're time poor in our lectures, but have the time to perhaps go through an example and say, this is what I like about this. This needs more here, just to give them an idea. I always record, and I think we have to now anyway, but I always record and post the link to every communication I have with the students, every lecture, every seminar, every collaborate session, everything, every tutorial, so that that's for students who can't always attend, but it's also for those students who really want to go back over it because they haven't captured everything first time, and they can pause things and they can make notes. And this is very, very supportive, again, for that organization and executive functioning. It's an option for them. All of these strategies that I've been chatting about are beneficial for the whole class. Of course, it's not just aimed at those students who are twice exceptional. It will help those students who are twice exceptional, of course. But I haven't met anyone that has said, I don't want to use that, don't put it up there. They want to use it, they just tend not to. And those that tend not to have already kind of been on a few courses and they're kind of in their stride and they know what they're doing, they know what the expectations are. But with courses when they're pretty much coming in new, or they naturally worry about their work and their output, or they have something else going on, we find that this is really helpful. So now it's a bit of time for you to perhaps collaborate, think individually or collectively about which strategy of these do you think you could implement now on your Moodle? Like which ones? So we're looking at these strategies. We're looking at the, here we go, these ones, a weekly checklist, or it could be an assessment checklist. Or it could be a whole course checklist, but that probably would be a bit, we're trying to chunk things for people. So a weekly checklist on the Moodle, so you might do week 2 for next week. A template for the assessment. Okay, I know the assessment's 2,000 words, right? 3 parts, 500, 500, 500, and then an introduction and a conclusion, about 250 each. They wouldn't be, it'd probably be 200, 300, I don't know, but you know, just that's how easy the template can be, how straightforward. Have you got any old assessments from previous classes that you can de-identify and post up there now as an example? And I can help because I've become a bit of a whiz on Moodle, nothing else computery, but certainly on Moodle, and I can help you actually find the buttons to put the things in. And also worked examples, when I'm thinking of worked examples, just using your iPhone. You know how some students can never ever find what is on Moodle, but they just seem to get overwhelmed and they just don't seem to find what we think is really obvious, or they don't know how to do a Turnitin. I use my iPhone and I film me doing this on my screen. I say, okay, I go to this tab here, I click here, and then I've got my assessment in a folder and I drag it over to my bit here, and then I press upload and I press submit. Close it, and then file it on the Moodle. How to access Turnitin. And it's just then something visual that they can have and look at, that rather than just a list of instructions. For some people, instructions are lots and lots of words swimming around in the ether, and they just want to hear and see. They don't want to read everything. So that's your option now. The idea being that you have about 5 or 10 minutes to perhaps put something in place if you want to. We don't want to lose them. That's the thing, and we don't want this overwhelm happening. And what is intuitive for many students who don't have disability or neurodiversity that impact that kind of executive functioning, we just want to support it. And those students who don't need it also find it supportive. But you know, if you're always behind the what I call always behind the blackboard, always feeling like you're missing out on something, it does lead to worry that can actually escalate. And then we suddenly have students on our hands who are really anxious, really behind, and talking about leaving. And that's what we kind of want to avoid. And these are quite simple steps that we can take. Something you said about fidgeting and things, you can see when I'm in lectures or in tutorials, and I start seeing, it might look all calm on the surface, or you might see people fidgeting, like, or they do it. But under the surface, you'll see someone doing that with their leg, like really fast. And I sort of try and gauge the room, and I try and do a lot of moving around and group work. So I will perhaps give people a coloured piece of paper. They all come in and I'll just go, okay, all of the blue team getting together over here, all of the red team over here, and that green or whatever it is. And they get up and they have to move around. The problem with that are those students who have a diagnosis of autism don't necessarily like that constant change and having to meet new people. So you just have to be cognizant of that. If you're see, when we get special considerations through, obviously we're not told, what the special considerations are actually about. Sometimes I can kind of work it out by reading what the accommodations are, but we don't know. So it's only usually a student will tell me, and so I'm aware. So just be aware, if some students are really resisting that moving, you might just have to rethink how you're going to do it. And if you see that, you know, you can do anything from say to them, you're in charge of the blue team. You don't have to go anywhere, but all the blues are going to come to you. So you're sort of taking out half of that disruption for them. Just a way of thinking about it. Because I've had people who, not in my classes, but who have actually left university because they don't like the changes. They don't like not knowing where everyone's going to be in every tutorial. Like everyone has their place and they sit there, and that's how it should be. And we don't want to lose these people for that reason. Okay, we want to keep them engaged and on board. So I do this in all bachelor's courses. I do it in master's courses, and I will do it for my PhD students. I won't do it, like it's not a Moodle for a PhD, but I will have structures and things available for them. I'm saying this month, this is what you need to get done. So I want you to think about what you can do each week and come. So I don't do it for them. You know, they're doing a PhD now, right? So I don't do it for them, but then they come back and then we try and stay on track that way. It's just doing that scaffolding, because it's like, I think of it as a social justice issue, and I'm going to try and give you an example. It's like me saying to everyone in a big lecture hall, everyone who's wearing glasses, and I wear glasses, I just don't when I'm teaching because I'm vain. Everyone who's wearing glasses, take them off, because you're all master's students now. All right, you don't need glasses. Okay, now look at this. All right, what does it say? You with no glasses. Okay, yeah, exactly right. So yeah, so it's just really it's if we're short-sighted, it isn't that we're not held back because we can't see from the back of the room, or we can't, or if we're long-sighted, we're not held back because we can't read print. If we have neurodiversity and we don't have the same functioning happening in those frontal lobes, that's for us as the educators to make sure it's an even playing field. We don't just say, everyone take your glasses off, or, you know, you're now at university, you should be able to organize yourself. That just won't happen. It won't happen for them. It's like asking somebody who can't walk to just go and run around the field. It just will not happen. So what we're trying to do is kind of just accommodate it. And these things that I'm suggesting are very easy to implement, I think, because I've done it. And I'm happy to help anyone now. If they're saying, where's this checklist? What does it look like? I'm happy to sit there now with you and set up a checklist. Or, you know, set up the template for assessment. If you email me, I'll share with you my template. It's just a Word document, intro, conclusion, 3 things, this many words each, go. And that's all the students need. It helps with activation. That's starting. Yeah. And what you're talking about there, for those that stay in, is that we call it the masking effect, where your ability to do something masks your neurodiversity or your challenge, your area of challenge. So the ability might be way up here and they could be HD students, but because of all of these challenges, one masks the other and they kind of are fairly, you know, they're passing, but they're ordinary level. The same can happen where your disability or your neurodiversity can also mask your ability. The same thing happens. We kind of vanillaize the outcome, and it's for no other reason that we just need to cater more for people who you can't magic something to happen in your head or in your eyes or in your legs that you can't do. It just can't happen. So what we do is just put a few simple things in place, and that makes a big difference. And I put it out there for all of the students, and usually even my master's students, and they've done years of university, they often use these structures because they're just saying, I'm so busy and I'm working a full-time job and I've got a young family and I'm juggling everything, and this structure has been so helpful just to keep me going, keep me in the game. Because we want to see everybody's ability. We don't want to see what's, you know, holding them back. And so we want to see what they're thinking, and we want to, so that's just how I do it. So I try and do things that are really straightforward on the Moodle. It's not going to change my world and take me too long. That weekly checklist, that template of how you could set up, examples of the assessment, dates on the Turnitin portals, just really simple things. If I'm face to face, giving that option of a walk around when I see the energy of the room really go down or start getting really fidgety. Like group work or walk around the room, or I don't do star jumps. I think they'd all walk out if I did that. So, but things like that, just being that's the only thing I change face to face. Everything else could be in face to face, or as long as it's on the Moodle, and it's not much. It's like I think 4 things, and it makes a difference. So, yeah. And those little videos, how to submit an assignment. I've got somebody who came to me last night on a lecture, master's, and they said, I haven't been in university for 35 years. It's all like they used to write their assignments and post it under the lecturer's door. I remember those days, okay? So it's a big deal. And this person, I don't know if they have any neurodiversity or anything else going on, but for this person, having these little video shots were just, so you just, it's just so much easier. I was really worried about it. People get worried, and yes. 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 Yeah. And this took me probably, I say 5 minutes, it didn't. It probably took me an hour to find the assessments, to de-identify them, to post them up, to post up an example template, to put in the dates, because I've got to put in the Turnitin dates anyway, or I've got to put in the thing, so I just add to the title, and to put in the weekly checklist, maximum an hour, I'd say. And I just feel it makes a difference. I really do. Absolutely, every year and across every course. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't tell you how many people, and they're usually people who haven't been in university a long time. This has nothing to do with neurodiversity. It's nothing to do with disability or anything else that's going on. And they're saying, I don't understand how to access the weekly readings. And it is a link, and it takes you straight through to, is it Leganto? It takes you straight through to that, to the library, and you can get everything. And so, and I've been showing them, and I've just now put a little video up. When you're looking for the weekly readings, here's the thing, and I've actually put it in the checklist. So see video on the checklist. Have I done the weekly readings? See video. And it's just there. Weekly checklist. Okay, so what I do is I do them on the week. Okay, so I'm going to actually add one now to how we do it. So I'm going to open this section. I've got it. I'm going to just add another one, okay, at the bottom. Add a resource. And I go to checklist. Now, like I said, checklists look different on ours. It's just a list, whereas the students actually tick it off, and we can monitor that tick off, which is great. It flags students that might be struggling. Okay, checklist. Okay, week 1 test, I'm going to call it. Okay, and what I need to do now is, where is it? Let me just save that and return to the page. I've been doing this all yesterday. This should happen. I won't notify the students. They'll freak out. There's another checklist. Right. So now I want to go into the settings. Okay, settings, where we are. Where is it? Oh yeah, got it. Thank you. Thank you. There we go. Right. So I'll go say, okay, this is the first one. So under edit checklist, read readings. And then I add that. I wouldn't say read readings. That sounds a bit clumsy. Okay. And then I would say consider issues for assignment 1. I would say assignment in full. I wouldn't put AS up there. And I might say watch 3 recordings before lecture 1. Absolutely. And that's what I do. So I do the readings and I'll actually link that URL. And it's lovely. So just go into it. They're not mucking about, on screens. If they're on a little mobile phone, it's really easy. You can imagine trying to navigate Moodle. And that's how I do it. Yeah, and I'm just going to, so this is where viewing progress, this is where I can see where students are at. But for me, it just becomes this list. But for the students, there's a tick box next to their URL and everything, so I can view it. So that's how it's really great. Yeah, I love those. Now I've found them. They're like, yes, brilliant. No, what I've done is so for example, the template for the assessment, that's another line on Moodle, but I don't put the whole template up there. They have to click through. So because it's optional, they don't need to see it. They just need to see the title. So all of what we call chunking, all of the chunking is done as an optional extra behind the scenes. So they have to click the link to get there. And that's how I do it. But it is, so I put everything behind the scenes. I don't have it on the front facing of Moodle. And that's how I try and minimize it. But Moodles can become busy. Yeah, like in a folder, yeah. Yeah. And then they go that and open it. Yeah. And there are some other things, like I used to use Studiosity, and there's a new one come out, which I'm getting on my courses. These are things that you can have a team. They kind of help monitor students, and they show how to do APA referencing, and they show how to set up, and they'll do some proofreading for you and things like that. And students that use that, and it can be you just might send them your paper and say, I want you to check APA referencing through this, or I want you to check that I've got the theme of the argument running all the way through this. They'll only check 1 or 2 things, and they'll get it back to you within 24 hours. And the amount of people that use it is quite low, because I don't know. I think maybe it gets a bit last minute, as we do. But that's really helpful. So there's a lot of things online, and a lot of library help. Always pointing people towards the library, like the APA referencing tool. Not that I'm an APA reference, crazy. That I'm not. But we just have to observe those rules, so students can get overwhelmed with that. So the referencing rules. I hide it. Yeah. Yeah, I keep it as close. So we have to have the fail, pass, credit, distinction, high distinction. So there's always those categories and descriptors within those categories. But as far as the rows go, there's a category for knowledge. There's the final category, which is always the smaller, is like presentation, and that includes APA referencing, spelling, the stuff, that stuff. And there's like a category around argument or expression. So they might have a great argument, but we use 5 references, for example. So I talk them through that, but I don't get a lot of questions around it. So maybe it is simple, or maybe people just look at it and think that I can't even ask. I don't know. Good question, but not too complex. Too many things otherwise. And you've got to mark and comment on all those things as well. So, yeah. Yeah, but when we're assessing, all we want to do is make sure students can tell us what they know, so we can assess that. And it's okay, it's their expression. Most cases, it's written expression. I've done it in some cases where I'll have students do a presentation, and they'll set up a PowerPoint, and they have to have all the references, everything academic, diligence through it, but they stand there and talk, because they can tell me more than I'd ever want to know about a certain subject. But when it comes to writing it, it's just not there. And so they're getting really great scores on the doors. The rubric's exactly the same. I'm still assessing the knowledge and the expression. How's the flow of the argument? What's the knowledge? How many, all of that stuff. I'm still assessing it, but just through a different medium. And that can work really well with some students.